and gentlemen, excellencies, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great privilege to be here. The title of today's and yesterday's conference, as I may recall it, is Hungary Connects. So the question, I think, is rightly asked: how does Hungary connect? And what does this connection mean to the Balkan countries? What is the Balkans' relationship to Hungary and to EU and vice versa? I think we can better understand our special relationship if we take a look at how the rest of the world sees us, how the external world sees our relationship. Let me share a story with you. The story shows that it is not necessary to analyze diplomatic, geopolitical, or even economic strategic aspects in order to be able to show the strong and old ties that connect the Balkan states with Hungary. Sometimes a mere coincidence tells us more than 1,000 analyses. So, here comes the short story. It is also a strange coincidence that exactly half a century before this conference is held, in 1973, a popular cookbook was published simultaneously in Austria and Germany, which aimed to popularize Balkan cuisine. This in itself would not be so interesting, but what is interesting is that the author also listed the highlights of Hungarian cuisine among the best recipes in the Balkans. In other words, we would also say that in the eyes of the rest of the world, Hungary and the Balkans form a kind of a culinary union. But I don't think that the connection stops here. I'm almost certain that the rest of the world sees us, the Balkans and Hungary, as some kind of a geopolitical, economic and cultural union. After all, even that German chef, so the guy relatively close to us, whose country has explicit ambitions, obviously, in this region, sees us as a united whole. Of course, we know these rough conclusions are not entirely right. The Balkan itself consists of many countries which differ from each other, and Hungary also differs from them. There is an old joke which I heard in Zagreb. A guy from Brač buys a ticket for a match between Hajduk and Dinamo and gives the cashier 30 euros. The cashier says, "Excuse me, sir, the ticket is 60 euros. Oh, that's okay. I support Hajduk. I will only watching them," he replies. So this little anecdote, I think, proves, or joke, proves that there is no other region in the world those inhabitants are as proud of their identity and differences as in the Balkans. But I think this is good news for us, because we are here to talk about connectivity, but you cannot connect what is already united. Connectivity cannot be done without differences, but it also cannot be done without something we all have in common. So, connectivity is a tremendous opportunity for both the Balkans and Hungary. And if I am right, this conference is about how to connect the Balkan states to Hungary and to the European Union, and how to connect the Balkan states through Hungary. In the last days, you and I, myself and my colleagues, we heard a lot about the very different perspectives. So right now I don't want to repeat everything what was said earlier, but I would like to use the available time to talk about Hungary in general, what Hungary means by the term connectivity. I would like you to get familiar with our ideas. I'm certain when I get to the end, it will become clear what this has to do with the Balkans as well. We have to start with what used to be the world order and how it has changed for now. The post-Cold War era after 1990s brought the world what we know as a kind of a neoliberal world and model of globalization. This was the first time in the history of mankind that the world order has become unipolar in such a degree. This model promised that the lack of regulation in business and the adaptation of Western rules would shape non-Western countries as well in the image of the West. This would be a moment when differences between the West and the rest disappears, when the rest becomes the same as the West. The US and the Western world thought that free trade would export Western liberal political institutions all over the world. Then we would witness the end of history, as Francis Fukuyama famously put it. But, as it turned out, this kind of neoliberal project has achieved the exact opposite of what it was created for. Challengers learned the ins and outs of capitalism, but they began to play according to their own interests. Economically, they grew stronger, but in the eyes of neoliberal capitalism, wasn't the only game in town. By the end of 2000s, the problems of this model were becoming more and more visible. Financial crisis, 2008, showed that unregulated markets are fragile and harmful. Migration crisis led to kind of a popular disillusionment with the political elite. Brexit, presidential victories in the United States became some kind of symptoms, or at least symbols, of these changing political patterns on the West. The COVID pandemic hit global supply chains hard. Now the war in Ukraine shows this kind of divergence very clearly. Western countries could mobilize only Western countries and some other countries against Russia. So we like it or not, the unipolar world order is no longer exist. So the geopolitical situation is changing. What we see is the fragmentation of the global political, economic, and security order. The old status quo is over. So is the neoliberal model of globalization. In response to this, according to our understanding, the West wants to preserve, obviously, its influence by re-establish the system of blocs. The great powers in the West, especially the US, they say that if their global power is weakening, they still can create an exclusive spheres of influence where they dominate. However, and this is where our position is coming into, however, this is dangerous for us, for Hungary, and for Central Europe. Because in such a system, there will be leaders and peripheral states in each bloc. Peripheral status means a subordinate role. You must choose a center, which then becomes your exclusive connection to other countries. You use your liberty to choose your partners. In sum, your opportunities to improve your economy and your living standards become more and more limited. Let us be in no doubt that in this scenario, our region will be a peripheria. If this kind of bloc-based system is restored, we will lose our prospects to develop, catch up with the really highly developed countries. Hungary has had a particular bad experience in such blocs. We learned these lessons under the Turkish occupation, where there were Muslim civilizational bloc and the Christian civilizational bloc, during the Habsburg Empire, and under the Soviet Union as well in the Cold War period of time. In the current war and resulting economic sanctions, East-West trade routes have been blocked. But these routes are crucial to Hungary's economic success. So Hungary made it clear A block system, a re-emerging and restructured kind of block system, is contrary to Hungarian national interest. Now the questions are how we can avoid this, how can we maintain growth potential and protect economic interest, how can we overcome fragmentations. We need the right answers, because if we fail, Hungary won't escape the middle income trap. So the stakes are quite high. Our national answer is the following. We need a new strategic model that focuses on increasing relations, not to decreasing them. We need more connections, not fewer. We need less decoupling, not more. This is our model. The key word of our strategy is connectivity. It means that we want as many connections as possible with countries all over the world. This goes for economics, trade, infrastructural ties, investments, knowledge transfers, and public diplomacy. With this strategy, we want to override, in some sense, the block logic, because that logic does nothing but blocks our path to kind of a prosperity. We want to connect ourselves to success. Connectivity helps us not to become, again, a peripheria. We can build and control our relationship with others without limitations from the bloc leaders. On the other hand, foreign connectivity is also a foreign policy strategy. It means Hungary wants to take part in every possible formal or informal international cooperation. Of course, we are members of the European Union, which is the most important connectivity point of us. And despite all our political conflicts, it's still the most valuable asset, and primary, it's still about economic integration and economic connectivity. And it makes the European market accessible for Hungarian economic actors. We are also a member of NATO, the world's largest and strongest military organization. We are proud members of that, which was created primarily to protect countries and connect countries through shared security concerns and shared answers to these kind of security challenges. But besides the two great umbrella alliances of the West, we also want to be part of specialized single-focus organization. The brightest example of this specialized alliances is obviously the Visegrad group, which is the cornerstone at this moment of the self-organization of Central and Eastern Europe, and helps its member states to coordinate their actions in the EU political space. We also member of Bucharest 9, which is a cooperative framework of countries that make up the eastern flag of NATO, and which coordinates the security and defense policy of the 9 countries beyond the NATO framework. Good example is Vienna, Budapest, Belgrade cooperation, which is dedicated to taking actions against illegal immigration on the southern borders of the EU. We are also members of the 3C initiative, led by Poland, an association which was created to coordinate development programs in Central and Eastern Europe and to make our region connected in terms of infrastructure. But we also take part in formal and frameworks of cooperation which extend to the eastern regions of the globe. Hungary participates as an observer state in the organization of Turkish states, helping us to connect Central Asia and Central Europe in the field of economy and energy. And Hungary is also taking part in the Belt and Road Initiative, which is an informal network for economic cooperation with China. So these are the foreign policy landscapes of Hungarian connectivity strategy. On the other hand, connectivity is also an economic breakout strategy. It builds on our economic strengths, Since 2010, Hungary has created an economic model which is suitable for this kind of strategy. The state plays a key role in the development. We have a tax system that encourages investments and entrepreneurship, high value added sectors. Connectivity model focuses on these advantages. We encourage foreign direct investments. The inflow of foreign capital is already breaking records. Energy, also a crucial sector. Current energy crisis shown that we need as many connections and as many divergence points as it is possible. Financial sector matters so. We want the Hungarian banking sector to become a regional and even at one point a global player. Higher education promotes knowledge transfers between industrial actors and research centers. This is a new kind of basis of innovation. And on the industrial level, we are seeking to build up military industry, telecommunication sector, strengthen our food, pharmaceutical, and automobile industry. These are the main sectors, actually, where kind of a connectivity really matters. But we also want to preserve, as I'm a politician, I should also talk about this, but we also want to preserve the values that interconnect our civilization, European culture, Judeo-Christian values, and the history are key to our success. And this is something we keep forget, that these are the values which are connecting the West with itself. This is why we call for respect of national sovereignty, and we say no to any ideas of European superstate. This is also the reason why we are protecting our borders. We think that illegal migration must be stopped, not encouraged. Strengthen Christianity. We support building, renovation, supporting churches. We support families, traditional families. We invest over 6% of our GDP for our unique pro-family policy. We want to cancel the burden on parents who would like to have more children. And lastly, this is why we have a confrontation on a gender propaganda issue, and this is why we clearly reject it. So, our recommendation is not to forget who we are and where we are coming from, and how the West in the history for like 1,000 years was connected. This is how we see the world around us and the way we want to overcome the difficulties ahead of us. Our main message is clear. Hungary is against the return of separated international blocks. Hungary is against the general idea of decoupling. We think that we need more peace, more peaceful cooperation, and more connectivity in as many fields as it is possible. Unfortunately, some powers, and what mostly concerns us, some of the leaders of Brussels seem to be more committed to the opposite direction. I know that there are many people here from the Balkan states as well, from Serbia, Albania, North Macedonia, who aspire to become members of the European Union. This would mean truly connecting the Balkan to the European Union. Sadly, Brussels leaders hesitate to take the efforts of these countries seriously and try to delay or sometimes block their European integration. Ladies and gentlemen, this is where decoupling is put into everyday political practice. On the contrary, Hungary has been the loudest advocate of Balkan integration. I think this is the point where the Balkan states' interests and Hungary's interests coincide. The states of the Balkan have an excellent geopolitical location, cultural heritage, to become, on one hand, part of the European integration, and on the other hand, become a connecting route between the West and the East. When I say that we have common interests, and I also mean that the Balkans and our country, Hungary, are dependent on each other. Regional thinking is a basic element in Hungary's connectivity strategy. Our model and vision, moreover, particularly focuses on regional relations. Regional links are critical. This is the main reason why we must and do pay special attention to the Balkan countries. Strong and deep ties with the Balkans are in Hungary's national interest. The whole idea of connectivity is actually totally empty without these relations. On the other hand, the Balkans need also Hungary to become a region that connects different parts of the world. This strategy works only if mutual interests coincide and if they are represented and well represented and well realized. So the success of the Balkans in building connections can be attained if the Hungarian model is successful. This is true the other way around. Together we can resist the current trends of decoupling. We need each other, to put it so simple. In practice, common interest means common action and intensive cooperation. We can talk about it at length when it comes to energy, infrastructure, finance, telecommunication, and so on. But I don't want to take up too much of your time. I think you heard about these topics in great detail. But the point I want to make is that the phrase I chose for today's speech, connectivity, is not about random type of cooperation in different sectors. It is an organized principle. It is a kind of gravitational force. Just like when you throw the ball and it falls on the ground because the force of Earth attracts the ball. Connectivity does the same. It is a strategy that builds connections and draws them in, directing them to one point. And our goal is to become actually that kind of point, to be the gravitational center of trade, investments, innovation, and so on. So I hope that I was able to present you how we Hungarians see the world and how we think about it, because when we are thinking about it, we cannot do it without considering and sharing this view with the Balkans. So, you like it or not, you are always at the forefront of our strategy. This is why I'm so happy to be here, and I think this is why we will have a perfect time to enjoy our wonderful cuisine, which we will have today, and it's a shared kind of cuisine, Hungarian, Balkan cuisine. So after the serious discussions, bon appetit, and thank you very much for the attention.